Welcome to Sound and Vision, conversations with contemporary artists and musicians about the creative process. Here's the host of Sound and Vision, Brian Alfred.
Sound and Vision is sponsored by Golden Artist Colors. Manufactured in upstate New York, an employee-owned company, Golden makes the best acrylics, oil paints, and watercolors that you can buy. You can find them in your local art store, or you can find them online at goldenpaints.com. Sound and Vision is supported by the New York Studio School. The school welcomes artists from around the world to join us this summer in New York City or virtually from your studio to learn from dedicated artists and expand as a maker in the legendary marathon program. Rigorous and immersive, marathons unfold over 10 days from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time daily and present an extensive range of art-making strategies, comprehensive critiques, and inspirational discussions. Expansive first-hand discoveries propel artists to relate to drawing, painting, and sculpture as direct methodologies for understanding one's experience in the world, the profound impact of which continues far beyond each marathon's conclusion. Generous partial scholarships are available. Visit nyss.org to apply today. Fulcrum Coffee Roasters are a Seattle-based full-service wholesale coffee roaster and retailer with over 25 years of experience defined by a focus on premium roast coffee and local and global community. Check out their coffee at fulcrumcoffee.com. Sound and Vision listeners can get 20% off your order of coffee by using the code ALFREDSTUDIO when you make an online order. Miranda Fengyuan Zhang was born in Shanghai, China in 1993. She earned her BFA in studio art from NYU in 2016. Scattered Lines is her current solo exhibition with Candice Madey Gallery and Chambers Fine Art Gallery, which runs through July 3rd. Other solo exhibitions include Capsule Gallery in Shanghai, Halsey McKay Gallery in East Hampton, and Half Gallery in Shanghai. She's been the recipient of the Maison Contemporain residency in Asilah, Morocco, and will be an upcoming resident at the Architopia Foundation in Mexico. I spoke to Miranda about playing piano, the loom, Shanghai and New York City, her incredibly close studio assistant, travel as inspiration, and much more. Here's our conversation. So hard to do the same thing over.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
No, it's not gonna happen. It's really, when you meet somebody at the first time in the conversation, it's very different than if you want to try to make a same one again.
Right.
It's never the same.
How do actors do it where they do like 50 takes of something?
Well, that's their job, I guess. They just they can just run it. They can just. Yeah, but they have the script, so I think it will be easier for them since they have a script to follow.
That's true.
But for an interview or conversation, it's difficult because everything is from the memory, from who you are, and then it's going to be more difficult.
Right. Now, when you're making your work, do you follow a script? Do you have, like, it sketched out? Is it pretty much solid? Do you know what it's going to be?
No, actually. I'm a very intuitive person. With the knitted work, which I have zero sketch, I just usually lay out, pick all the colors, lay out all the balls, the yarn balls in front of me with the color palette I want. And then I just start mixing the yarns together. I usually mix, depends on the texture of the yarn, the material. It's wool, cotton, or anything, or even the yarn that has glitter. So I mix them together. And then I just start knitting. And that's a very intuitive process. I don't have any sketch. But with the weaving, since it requires a bit more rules, I would have a very, very simple sketch that kind of know the composition, right. But it can also change throughout the way. and the color is not exact color with the color of the yarn. I usually do it with color pencil. So there are a lot of adjustment and intuition throughout the ways.
It sounds not dissimilar to like a loose pencil sketch for a painting.
Yeah, not very. No. It's really. I will do it on my notebook. It's really like 1 by 1 inch, that kind of size.
Yeah.
And then I would just do like, and also with the composition, it can be totally different when it's on the loom, because I don't even do any calculations.
Right.
The only calculation I do usually is at the preparation stage, where I have to decide how wide the piece is gonna be and how many threads I need for each inches, and that's when the serious calculation happen. But usually I don't even do, when it's actually on the loom, when I start weaving, I don't do like serious calculation. I kind of just let it go. Yeah.
Right. So with, artists usually, like when you're young, kids draw, they sketch, and it's just usually it's part of like almost every kid's childhood is you like to sketch or draw things, and that can be a portal. When in working with fiber, I think there's a natural tendency for people to imagine that this might be something that you had a relationship to when you were younger, like fabrics.
Yes.
Or it stems out of a process that's probably tied to some experience in the youth. But then again, there are some people who find it in college. So like, was this something like growing up? Were you a sketcher, and did you also have this kind of, relationship to fabric or fiber or whatever whenever you were younger?
Actually, I never studied art. I didn't even like do sketches when I was young. I study actually music.
Perfect.
Yeah, I know.
That fits perfectly within the context of the title of this podcast.
I actually was growing up in Shanghai.
Right.
And my mother kind of just, the Chinese education, the tiger mom. Like, she's not really like a tiger mom, but she kind of, followed every other parent's path. Like, you had to study piano, you had to do dance, ballet dance, and all those like classical trainings. And I never thought about I could become an artist later. Like when I'm in the junior year in my college, I was not even in art major. I went to NYU, but I was in liberal art program, and then the junior year I transferred to art. So I actually didn't have serious art training. But I always love materials.
Yeah.
When I was in college, actually I did mostly ceramics. So, and then after the college and after I graduate, I still did a little bit ceramics, but in New York City, it's very expensive. Then you don't really have the access to the ceramic studios, the kilns, and the tools.
It's a lot.
And then it's a lot. I tried to go to those shared studio space, but you don't have the freedom to do whatever you want.
Right.
It's not like in school. Then I was like, I need to find something else to do that's more accessible. And then I always loved yarn as a materials. So I started actually making sweaters, and then, but I now if I think about this material, my grandmother from my mother's side, she was a knitter, but I actually never met her. I kind of only hear a story about her. Mm-hmm. So my family, back in the 60s and 50s, we were quote unquote the aristocracy kind of family.
Right. And
after the cultural revolution, so we had a very difficult moment. So my grandmother kind of self-taught her how to make jumpers and sweater. That's the leisure for all the women back then, because you don't have that much access to, the industrial made fashion goods, and she loves, making clothes. She loves clothes, but she just couldn't afford it. And the yarn was very luxury material too. So she would make small jumpers for my mom and my uncle. But when they grow up, the jumper would be too small. So she had to unravel the old sweater and make a new one. So that story kind of always embedded in my memory. And so a lot of my knitted works are from leftover yarns that I gathered from the Chinese factories. And so I think I kind of had a little bit relationship to this material, to fibers. But actually when I was very young, or the path I grew up, I didn't have any association with this material, actually.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I just thinking about fiber and like the way in the loom and making that kind of work, I can't help but think of it feels like, and you would know this and I don't know this, it feels like there's somewhat like a similarity between playing piano and working on the loom as far as like the relationship
totally.
to it, isn't it? With the strings
totally,
and all that
totally.
stuff. It's so interesting.
Because you have to use both. Yeah, exactly. You have to use both your hand and your feet.
Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about it when I was on the loom yesterday. I was trained classically with piano. So, because everybody told my mom, you have to let her play the piano because that's the best way to train both your brains. So I mean, and when I'm on the loom, I always feel it's very similar. Like you have to coordinate your whole body in order to weave.
Yeah.
And I love that process because your body kind of just dive into that instrument, and then you have to really think about how you coordinate all of them and the way you do the paddle. For me, it's really interesting. Like, do you use your right feet? Because in piano, usually you do your right feet, but right foot. But actually, on weaving, you have to do both. It's more like a dancing on the paddle. Depends on how many paddles you have. Right. It is. I think it does makes me think about piano when I'm on the loom.
You know what's interesting though? You're talking about a classical sort of analog piano, but if you think of like the Hammond organ or like electric organs, they play bass lines with their feet too. So they're using both feet.
Oh, right.
One really interesting thing about the structure of the loom and the piano is it's kind of like there's a geography to it. And in a sense, you're kind of like data mapping where you're plotting things out through space, through like a linear space. And it's almost like an equation. But I would think that the relationship of color in the loom and like the way you're working is almost like a similar sort of variable as like tones are in the piano, like how hard you strike is almost like the color of the instrument. So it's like where you're hitting the notes is where the notes go, like where you're putting that fabric is where it goes, but the color is almost like the sort of tone and the expression of it in a way.
Yeah, it is.
Is that
it's
dead
totally
wrong?
No,
I'm just reaching
it
right
is.
now. But it's just stuff I think about, this relationship to sound and music and to visuals.
I think it totally makes sense to me, actually. Yeah. And also, like, I don't know you have ever been ever on the loom before. I
haven't, but
the
I've been
sound,
near one.
You can hear the music of it.
Yeah.
When the beat the loom, and when the shafts are moving up and down, and also the paddle, it also has this very interesting music to it, the rhythm. Right. It's all about rhythm too, and also you talk about color. I think color is definitely my notes. like for me, even though I don't do any planning beforehand, color is totally like, for me, color always come first. Yeah. And then it will be the composition, it will be the content and the things that I want to make. But definitely color comes first, and the material. Yeah, it is. I think everything's. When I'm on the loom, I'm always listening to the music too. You know, it's all kind of connecting to each other. Yeah.
So do you vibe off specific stuff? Like if you're listening to Beethoven, is that going to be a different working day than Rachmaninoff or than like, you know, Thelonious Monk or something like that?
Yeah. I tend to listen to something more calm. Because if I'm on the loom for like, let's say like 6 hours and my body is really tired, and if I with upbeat music, I kind of get crazy. I need something more calm and just have a very good consistency. And actually, working with fiber, the tension, the consistencies is also very important.
Yeah.
Like how hard you press the pedal, how hard you beat the beat. It's all about consistency. So you kind of need your body to get into this very good consistency. So you make sure all the tensions and the space that between each yarns are as close as possible to each other. I usually just do like more calm, Sakamoto sometimes, you know, and classical, and also I do like very, I don't know, I'll go on my Spotify and just do, you know, a mix of everything, but usually like quite calm, yeah.
Right. And you're based in the city, right? You're here in New York.
Yes, I am.
So do you have a big studio, or is it relatively intimate?
I work from home, actually.
Perfect. So do you have a baby grand right next to the loom?
I have my dad actually next to my loom all the time.
Oh, really? Different than the piano, but yeah.
Yeah, I have actually an electronic piano home. Nice. I brought it all the way from my high school. I went to high school in Toronto, so I was actually in a jazz band.
Oh, really? So you did know who Thelonious Monk was?
Yes. Wait, that sounds very
He's a
familiar.
bebop pianist. The one guy with the pork pie hat who like played like really funky. Anyways, you'll know him if you see him. But you just sounding by your sensibilities, you seem like you might be more of like a Bill Evans person than a McCoy Tyner person.
I'm terrible with name. I need to give me
we'll
please
share.
Send
We
me
can
those
share
names.
music after.
Yeah. Yes, please. I do need more music recommendation because I'm always on Spotify and they don't give me good music.
Well, wait. So how did you end up in Toronto for high school?
So when I was in China, the Chinese education system, I never feel I belong to that. It's very, for me, it's very harsh. It's purely just, you know, scores and take the test, and you have to be, you know, like the ranks and all that. And for me, it just is so limited. And I always had fight with my mother. And I had this like summer camp in Toronto one summer, and I loved it. And I was like, Mom, please send me to, you know, somewhere else, not study in China, please. Right. And then she kind of just find a place in Canada, and then I always wanted to come to States, but she's like, oh, you know, Canada is more safe. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And because I was only like 16, and she sent me just by myself. And then I went to boarding school in Toronto, but it ended up, I kind of hate it. So I told my mother, I was like, I have to go to New York. So I applied all the school in New York, and I told my mom, like, whichever school accept me, I will go. So I went to NYU. And then after graduation, I have been here ever since. But I now actually go back to Shanghai. I was in Shanghai since last November until the May, I just came back for the show. I had a show in Capsule in Shanghai. Mm-hmm. So now I feel like I kind of maybe will divide my time between the two cities more and more, because actually things happening a lot in Asia, in Shanghai. And I usually, in the past 10 years, I usually go back once a year. But this time I stayed 6 months. I really feel, wow, it's a very different city in term of what I do.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be with my family, my mother. So I might divide my time between the two places. And also I think my career kind of just start, and I'm having these good galleries good gallery in China, and I made some new friends in China, and so now kind of and also it's nice to travel. I love traveling. It's definitely one of my biggest inspiration in life.
I agree. It's been hard this last year, right?
Yeah, I love landscape. The landscape of different city, different culture. The light just different. Like when you take pictures of Tokyo or Japan or Shanghai, even though they're super close to each other, I mean, geographically, the light is different, the landscape, the people, and I need to travel. So yeah, the COVID, the pandemic just makes everything very difficult.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, I agree with you. I feel the same way. And, you know, I've been fortunate enough to like show in different places around the world for like the last 20 some years. So I've been able to travel to a lot of places that I don't think I normally would have if I didn't have a show in that place. So I realized my work has really become about like the world, like a broader look at things because of travel. Yeah. So it's so important. And then when that's taken away, like when we were basically locked in for a year, it was kind of tough, you know.
It is.
It's like traveling on Google.
Yeah, I was basically traveling on my laptop, watching movies, you know, trying to get a sense of outer space, and I kind of just locked myself with my dad. My dad is my first assistant here, actually. So we kind of just spent time at home, and that was a very productive year for me, actually.
Yeah.
Because you had nothing else to do, and you don't have any obligations. You don't have to go to the openings. You don't have to social. So it kind of gave me a excuse of, you know, making works and just really focus. And that's kind of interesting too. It just sometimes you get really burned out. Like you don't know what to make anymore.
And you're stuck. You're just in the same again, like the inspiration changes whenever it's all home. I guess though it was advantageous that your studio is where you live. So that makes it better in the sense that you didn't have to worry about going out to the studio.
Yeah, for me, I tried. I live in Chinatown, so I used to have studio in Brooklyn, so I have to go to Brooklyn every day. But actually now I have a you know, a very tiny office, like kind of studio space down the road. So it's mainly for studio visit and to do the dirty works, like putting the works on the stretchers and building the stretchers. And home usually is doing the, you know, the real work and weaving, knitting. And with fiber, I kind of like the environment is very clean. Yeah. Because you're dealing with wool and cotton and all these stuff. So if it's clean, for me, it's better. And so I work from home, and I love working from home, actually. So you wake up and you have a coffee, and you just go straight to the loom. You just start working, and you don't have to worry about commute. And I love working from home.
It really saves a lot of time. I think people are feeling that way too, who are working like normal jobs when they were working at home. It's like I can be so much more productive. I just get out of bed and hop on the computer, and I'm in a meeting or something. And I think that's going to change for a lot of people. I mean, my studio is really close. It's only like 7 minutes away. But I set up in my home office like a small space to work on smaller works. And it's been great because you know, if I'm with the family, like after they go to sleep, I could just hop into the office and work, you know, which I usually did on the computer. I would do computer work anyways, but it's nice to have that option of doing analog work as well. I think a lot of people have, you know, found that kind of like useful to just find a spot to work at home as well, if possible.
Right. I love it. I mean, for artists, I think, but I have friends doing, you know, finance, and they don't enjoy it because they literally just don't have excuse to do any break.
Oh yeah, just always working.
Yeah,
you're always on the clock.
Always. Yeah, exactly. So for them, it's kind of tough, and they don't have even time to get out, and people know you're home in front of the computer. But for me, it's perfect because I can do like 3 hours of weaving, and then I can do some drawings, and I can read something, watch something, and it's for me it's perfect. Even in Shanghai, I got a loom this time too, and nice. I was like also, you know, working from home, and it doesn't require a very big space. It just require, you know, the space that you can fit a loom in it,
right?
And it's very beautiful. A piece of furniture almost, so it doesn't even feel like, oh, you're in the studio, but it's kind of become a part of your home.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were saying your dad is here with you, and then when you go back, you stay with your mother?
Yes.
And then,
he kind of just travel with me now.
Yeah.
Whenever I go back, I come back with me and stay with my mother. And when because we have green card, so he has to be here for a certain amount of time.
Right.
But also, I think I kind of need him. He's very, very helpful with my work, actually. He's super handy with all the finishing works. And with the loom, when you put the work on the loom, you kind of need two person, and he has been just helping me a lot with everything.
That's a good family relationship, because I can tell you that there's not a lot of humans who would work with their parents and that works out.
I know, it's very surprising. I definitely can work with my mother. My mother is very demanding and high maintenance, but my father is super chill. Like, he would, you know, does his own calligraphy, and he would, you know, help me do the weaving, finishing works, putting structures together, even cook, and he's super, super helpful. I feel really, really grateful to have somebody like that. And as an artist, you know, like, sometimes you're always by yourself. Like, you spend all your time just be with yourself. And with my dad beside me, it's kind of, you know, so you don't, sometimes if I'm by myself too long with the loom, I kind of just like losing, you know, sense of time, losing sense of, you know, movement, and I kind of get depressed sometimes. But with my dad beside me, he kind of encouraged me, saying, hey, you have to make the works now, or sometimes like, hey, you have to go to bed.
Right.
You know, it's really interesting. Now it feels like a family business now, and I quite enjoy it. And sometimes my friends come over, and my dad will just like, the only thing he loves is to drink with my friend, and I don't drink. So I would invite my friends over and drink with my dad, and he will be happy, and he does his own thing, and he doesn't speak the language. So usually he has a walk, and he come back, and we just, you know, do our things separately. And then when I need him, I was just like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And he will just do it. And he's super, super good with his hands. I'm very surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And does he stay out of the art critique business, or is he giving you that kind of input?
He likes to critique. He really loves to do that. Whenever I finish a piece, or when I'm on the way, in the progress, and he always tell me, I think this piece, the color is not right. But he has his own, you know, taste, and he does it really funny. Sometimes actually the critique is helping a little, but sometimes it's like that. No. Let's not do this. It's too much, you know. Because he now he's kind of, because the more he sees me do it, the more he understands my progress and the color. So he likes to talk about my work. And I also like to take him, because my parents are not in art and they don't know art at all.
Yeah.
So when I started, everybody in my family got like so surprised, and they're like, tell me what you do exactly. And like every other parents when their kids want to be a full-time artist. So whenever they're in town, I usually take them out for, to look at shows and go to museums, go to fairs, just to let them understand what I'm doing. And my dad now totally gets it.
Right.
I took him to Freeze, I took him to openings, and now he totally gets it. And he look at other art too.
Mm-hmm.
He will even like tell me, does he like it, if he like it, or he hates it, or we kind of do a little bit communication with art now, which I feel very good about. Even with my mom in Shanghai, mom come to the opening with me, like, and look at art. And my mom is also very sensitive, and in a way I feel like they both understand art. It just like without the context they don't have, they don't have this connection with art, but I love them. I love to introduce all these to them, and it has been really good so far. And now because I had a show in Shanghai, now my mom is it's fine. I totally get what you're doing.
I was going to say that must have been really great to have the show, because it's different. Like if you were telling people or like your parents about, oh, I'm doing this and it looks like, but then when they go and there's an impressive space and they see the work presented like that and they see people looking at it, I feel like it always kind of like helps them think, oh yeah, this is real.
Yeah, exactly. My mom basically, my dad already understand what I'm doing, since I'm working every day. I'm not just playing.
Yeah,
I'm not just messing around. He sees it, the progress. Like he sees how much time I devoted to art. But my mom usually she's not with me. She has her own work. So I had this show in Shanghai, and in Shanghai, basically, the COVID situation was really well regulated.
Right.
We didn't even have to wear masks, and so my mom saw the opening, the people, and my work, and so she's super supportive. She's like, maybe you should just focus on making art. You just don't do anything else, because sometimes as an artist you have doubts and you have hesitations, and you will be like, maybe I can also do something on the side, and my mom and my family will be just like, no, like just be focused and do making art, and that's it. And I was like, whoa, like they're really different now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of proud. Yeah,
it's really it's a gift when you have parents that are supportive of that thing, of what you're doing. I think it takes one thing off the difficulty list of doing something creative, because creative fields are never easy. It's always difficult to sustain and to get the opportunities and all that. And if you have people, in your family barking at you that like, why don't you get a real job, or what are you doing with your life? It doesn't make it any easier.
Yeah, totally. No. And yeah, my mom, I think I'm very lucky to have a family like that. And the communication process has always been, we had arguments, but everything, I think we love each other so much that we try our best to understand each other. And the communication process is just very important. Like I kind of take the lead in this, and I also wanted to show them, I'm capable of doing it, and so now they're even more, they were supportive at the beginning. It just not like fully trust me, but now they trust me what I'm doing, and for me on the process of making art, I think it's super helpful. I don't have to think about anything.
Right. Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you a bit about is, the imagery that you're using, or that you're, creating in the work, I feel like is is kind of like unexpected in the medium, and it just feels kind of fresh and really interesting. And I just wanted to sort of, ask you like how you're coming to that imagery, and is it something that's very intuitive, or do you feel like you're specifically resonating with certain kinds of art history or work before, and this relationship between abstraction and the landscape and this and that and the other?
Yeah. Actually, now I'm at the stage that moving more to the abstraction. But when I started, I'm very intuitive. Like when I think about imagery, the pictorial part of the surface, I really focus on. I try to really focus on the material itself.
Yeah.
And when you kind of stay as close as to the materials, the imagery kind of just come out of it. You know what I mean? Like, you just like when you touch the material, when you see that, sometimes the cotton can be shiny, sometimes the cotton can be very matte, and sometimes the wool has different density of colors. When you work with those materials, sometimes it just come with the imagery would just come with the material. With the knitted work, of course, you always have this foundation of technique.
Yeah.
There are certain technique that can lead you to certain imagery. So that also kind of contribute to part of the imagery I do, but mostly kind of most of them are from the landscape, but they don't illustrate specific locations, and I'm always very inspired by the Chinese landscape painting in the past, the ancient paintings. It's not really about capturing a specific landscape. It's more like capturing the state when you're in front of this landscape.
Right.
So I can give you like a story. One of the piece I made, which was a early knitted piece, it was like a black, really big knitted piece. So I was in a trip to Arizona to see my friends in Tucson, and I arrived in the airport very late. It was dark. It was already night, and I had to take the shuttle from Phoenix City to Tucson. It was like 2 hours drive. And then when I landed, just the breeze of the desert is so different than the air in New York City. It's just like when the wind touches your skin, the wind like just blows, and the smell of the desert, even in the dark, like you can even feel it. You don't see the desert at night, but I was in this van on the highway. It was just like massive darkness outside of the window. The only light source is from the highway light in front of you. But you can feel your body, and your body can just, not your eyes. It's all about your body can even feel that's a desert. Yeah. It's not New York City. You don't smell the garbage. You don't smell the sweat. The smell of the sweat in the city, but you smell that the sandy wind, and it's pitch black. But that the desert is there, and some plants on the desert, the cactus and whatever is there. It's just this massive emptiness within this darkness. So that really inspired me. So that's why I made a almost like super dark piece. So a lot of my imageries are actually from that. It's more about when you're in front of, not when you're physically in front of a certain landscape. The landscape probably you don't even see it, but your body kind of react to it differently with different landscape. it's more about like a stream of conscious. It's about like as human as a nature itself, like react to the nature that in front of you. So that's something with my imagery. I'm trying to capture the same kind of feelings of it.
Yeah, I think it works really well because, like, to what you're talking about, that sensibility of the relationship of self related to the landscape, mixed with kind of like the abstract elements of what you're doing, to where there's a real, like, when you look at the imagery, there's kind of, there's a relationship immediately to the landscape. And then there's also like the investigation that you do to try to understand that relationship. You know, like what is this?
Right.
You know, like where is it, and what is going on here? There's something really engaging about that, to where you want to keep looking at the image. You know what I mean? It kind of draws you in, and there's a question mark in there that, you know, the same way.
I love the question mark.
Yeah, I love, like, you know, in those, you know, traditional Chinese painting, and, you know, I love ukiyo-e, like Japanese prints, and there's a real sort of linear movement on the picture plane where it's like you were saying, it's not a true representation of the landscape. It's more about this experience of the landscape over time, or like your eyes scanning the landscape in a way. And there's different things going on within it that become really interesting to look at. You know, it's kind of, I don't know, it draws you in and it keeps you in, I think, which is, you know, kind of like what we all want to do with an image. If we're making an image, we kind of want the viewer to like get stuck in it, you know, and just keep looking at it.
Right. Yeah, for me, it's totally, because usually, like, I would have audience come to my show asking me, what is it? Like, where is it? And, you know, for me, is I never give them answer. I was like, if you think what it is, and it is what it is. I usually make the titles, I usually give a little bit hint with my title, but that hint doesn't mean it's their perspective. It's more like my perspective that I see. Usually I make title after I finish the work.
Right.
So when I look at the work, the first thing that I see immediately, that will be the title of my work. But that can expand, depends, different audience react to it. I had this work called Nightfall in the show it's on now, and everybody, a lot of my friends, when they look at it, they would tell me, oh, it looks like somebody with a hood and facing back toward us, and I was like, oh wow, you see a human in there? You see a figure in there? For me, I what I see is really like a mountain with river in front of it and has a moon behind it. It's really interesting also to see the reaction of different people. And sometimes I would just ask my friends to name it. And it's a very interesting game for me. But I always like this void that people don't necessarily understand. This question mark. I mean, this question mark that people always have, and they would investigate. And because if I give them an answer, for me it will be quite boring. Like, it is a landscape from this mountain, you know. And I would love to hear like what they feel with the imagery and how they react to it. And that also is part of my inspiration, because looking through a different eyes, it's very interesting, because it may be associated with their memories and the way of the way they look at things, and it can be very different than mine. Because sometimes when I keep making the works, I kind of get blocked it with my own thoughts, right. But with other people's reaction, it kind of helped me to even move forward.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like one of the greatest things that art does, is it kind of asks these questions that aren't really answerable, and the mind always wants to answer them, so, and it was cool, like, in seeing the work, you see an image, and then you kind of, your brain comes up with an idea about what it is or what it looks like and why, and then reading the title, because I think your titles are really effective in sort of making it even more complex. Like A Weed is But an Unloved Flower is a pretty great title for an image. And
I love that title.
Then after you read the title, you look back at the image and you're like, okay, wait, so you know, like your brain wants to figure it out, but you understand there's a poetry to imagery to where it's not a literal thing necessarily. So it works really well in that sense, I think.
Yeah, I love when my things are not literal. Like I love there is a enigma, you know, in my work, and I like to play the game with the audience, and I like to play the game with, you know, my title, just to, you know, make it more fun. And I think it's also like I want it to be like, you know, a starting point of making more conversations. Because nowadays, because of the invention, you know, the internet, and we kind of miss, you know, a good conversations,
right?
Like conversation that it doesn't really matter like what topic is, but a meaningful conversation. I constantly miss it. When I was in China, I mean, it was fun with my family, and, you know, it was fun hanging out with my friends. But I always love New York because I always meet interesting people, and I can make good conversation, and that's very important for me. And, you know, the sparks that between two or more people, and you need that as a human being to have interaction with others, and to have to exchange different thoughts without any bias. And and I love to create conversation between my work and other people, and even between me and my work, and even my parents. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like I mean, obvious, this is a dumb question. I'm not embarrassed to ask a dumb question. So the discrepancy between how your work is seen when you're showing it here and back in Shanghai, do you feel like, is that really interesting to you, or is it kind of a major difference between the two?
Oh yeah, totally. It's not major, but I think it's in New York City we have like hundreds of galleries, and we have a lot to look in the city. That's why, you know, that's why I love it. It's just like the New York City is so rich with cultures, and the contemporary art history has been around for like as long as it happened, right? But in China, I think the contemporary Chinese art history is only like 30 years, and the contemporary art history is based on Western language, Western culture too.
Right.
So in Shanghai, I think it's really just Shanghai is the new portal of you know the contemporary art. But it's starting. It's really just starting. Like for even with the materials I'm working with, and a lot of people will be, oh, that's a new material, right? And I was like, not really. That material has a very, very long history, and with modern art, you have a lot of great artists using the same materials. But I think for the Chinese audience, they're really curious. They're so curious. Like you see all in front of all the museum. We have a lot of private museum in China. The lines every day in front of those museums are like 200-300 people.
Yeah.
So the general publics are super, super curious, but we don't have as many as resources to provide them. So people are really just start learning, and I think it's a really good sign. I think Chinese my people need it, and so when they react to my show, a lot of people who came to my show are not from the art background. They're just maybe like family friends, and when they react to it, actually I like their reaction, and it's not a negative word. It's like quote unquote like superficial. Yeah. Like they just see what they see. They won't process it.
when we were in art school, like when we had a crit, because you had this amount of knowledge of history of art, then you always kind of trying to associate with something with the work to the history of art or the things you have seen before. So it always, when you try to communicate with people in art, they always have this source of knowledge to associate with the work. But in China, those audience have zero experience with contemporary art or art history. What they do, they don't even go to museum. They don't even look at shows, and so all they look at probably is like TikTok on the phone. But when you're trying to make a conversation with them, they just say what they see. It's very direct. Yeah. Like when they see the shape of mountain, they will be like, "Oh, that's a mountain," but that's a mountain from maybe my memory of my trip to somewhere. So actually, it's very primary, the reaction, which I kind of like it, because it doesn't have any bias, doesn't have any thing that associate with something we are familiar with. It's really pure. It's very pure in a way.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that reaction, especially when the young kid, like 5 years old, came to my show. When they look at the work, they always immediately get it.
Isn't it funny?
They cut through. They just get it.
They just cut through all the stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the adults, when they look at my work, they will be like, "Oh, look at the title," and they're afraid of making it wrong. They always like, "Is it something?" They always think too much.
You know what it is? 5 year. Don't you think it's skepticism though? It's almost like art has such a place in our society where people don't buy it anymore because they're like, "Oh, well, I don't get it," and it's usually predicated on like, "Oh, you're selling this for a lot of money," whereas kids don't care if it's for sale or what. They're just looking at it, and they're not as skeptical about that stuff. So it's kind of sad in a way that
I think it's skeptical, and also it's intimidation. Like they feel like, "Oh wow, like art," especially in the audience in China. Even like I feel like people here too, like, "Oh, you're an artist," they always. Even when they go to shows, they're afraid of making it wrong. Right. But there's never wrong and right to talk about art. So I really respect when people come to my show, even the little kid, when they look at my work, they immediately just want to touch it. And my work is, I don't know, it's like textile and it's like kind of like fluffy, and they always want to touch it. And the second when they react to it, when the parents are always like, "What do you think it is?" And the kids are they just say it just so pure and so right. They're so direct, and I love their reaction. And I love when the kids, even the shows I had before, when the kids came, they just like enjoy trying to figure out what it is, and for them there's no any skeptical things happening or intimidation. For them it's just object, and for them it's just something they look at. And
so do you it's so funny how different audiences, and it's actually what makes it great is when you make visual work, it can be seen and interpreted by anyone. It's not like it's almost like music in that way. It's not like reading or like poetry or stories or like movies in a different language. It's kind of like it supersedes language in a way. But sometimes people, if they feel like they don't know the art language, they get intimidated, and that they kind of shut themselves off to it, which is kind of a shame. So what do you envision? I mean, you've been here in New York for a while. I mean, do you feed off the city? Has it changed in like the last year and a half as far as like, your feelings on the vibe of the city and making work here? Or do you see yourself as like, because you're going back and forth. I mean, do you feel like you have roots here now and you're just going to stay here and like go back and forth? Or do you have a pull to go back to Shanghai?
Oh, not full time. Definitely not full time.
A little bit. It's nice to visit, but not
a little bit. Yeah. I think I have been in New York almost 8 years now. I mean, I always have this love and hate relationship with New York.
Oh yeah.
Like sometimes like you hate it so much that you want to leave, but once you leave for 3 months, you kind of miss it. Like when you like this time when I came back on the cab and on the way to the city, when you just like the cheesiest thing when you see the skyline of New York City, you just like, oh my god, I'm finally back. But New York has changed for sure. Like 6 years ago when I was in college, it's very different. Like because my school was in East Village, and the East Village is very different back then. Like all the shops, all the people. But I think New York always has its energy, and has the essence is always there, no matter how much changes, how many people are always come in and go, but they're always fresh blood and always new energy coming. So yeah, I mean, I love the city, and well, not the winter though. The winter is kind of miserable.
Yeah, if only we could have New York, like the culture, the diversity, the food, all that, in a slightly more mild climate.
Yeah, but sometimes the New York winter also makes me, even the winter is so long, like until May, kind of like towards the end of the winter, like April or May, when everybody got really, really frustrated, like that's also a very interesting time. It just, New York as in the whole package, it just has so much and so much things to look at, like so much thing to, like when you're in New York, it just, a lot of things are happening. But also it's true that because it's a lot of things happening, you kind of, it's difficult to get to be focused.
Yeah.
Especially making art is like you need to be really self-disciplined. You have to spend, many hours a day in being in a studio and think about your work, making your work. But in New York City, because there's so many things going on, you kind of get distracted. And I have a lot of friends who now are no longer in the city, and they always told me it's a really draining place. Like you were constantly being sucked into this weird pool that you cannot, get out. So it's really, you have to really balance yourself in the city. But I'm a city person. Like I was born and raised in Shanghai. It is a very cosmopolitan city, and even more things going on. So I always loved the energy of city, but from time to time, I agree, I need to get out. Like I need to, be close to the nature and
refresh.
I love you. Yeah, refresh. And I love Europe, just the rhythm in Europe. It's much more slower, much more chill. It's, but I always love, but I love the agency, like of, making the works, go on deadline. The deadline sometimes drives me crazy, but I kind of love it too. I need both. I need, efficiency. I also need space and free time to explore. So I think New York will always be my base. And then from time to time, and I can travel. I can go back to China, be with, my friends and my family. But most of my friends are actually in States now.
Yeah.
So I think in the future, you no longer have this one place. I think people would like to travel around and be a kind of like a world citizen in a way.
Right.
I think that's gonna be the future. Let's see if I can support myself with this kind of lifestyle.
Right. Globetrotting. It's I think it's good for people. Like I think people who stay in one place their whole life become very sheltered and have a specific view, and I think it's good for the global population to have people who travel and understand different cultures and things like that.
Yeah, like we become more like a hybrid instead of just within one culture. And right. I think it's just more, the world is so complex, and the cultures are so, every culture is so different, and I just enjoy it to be with different people from different background and just talk about things. And and I think as an artist you have this privilege. Like you can go to residencies, you can have shows in different places, meet different people, and that's why also it's like I love this job, like quote unquote a job, and
Right. I would imagine though that you probably really I mean I haven't even had the good stuff, but I imagine you miss the food from Shanghai.
Oh,
I mean,
actually,
like real Shanghai cuisine, like, and I haven't even had like the real version of it, but the good version that I can get here is just so good that I would imagine really missing that.
I gained like 10 pounds when I was in Shanghai for the last 5 months. The food was amazing, but I actually miss more New York food, because New York food, like in New York, you can have so much varieties and
anything,
and anything, like the Japanese food you can get like very like home cooking, but you can also the best home cooking here, but you can also get the best fine dining here. I mean in Chinese food, that's difficult. I don't know, actually Chinese food in the city,
it's an interesting thing, right? The phenomenon of like the American Chinese food.
Yeah,
so,
but that's
like,
also
different.
I missed it though. Like when I'm in China, I kind of like, I kind of want a sesame chicken or orange chicken, but they don't have that in China.
Right.
But New York is like you can get the Thai food, you can get all sorts of food. But in Shanghai, it's like, okay, if you want to get like you can get pretty good Japanese food, but you have to find it. Shanghai is quite good though, like compared to other cities. Like I think you can get as many as possible, but for like French food and Italian, the problem with New York and Shanghai, I think French and Italian food are so expensive.
Oh yeah.
But in Europe you can get just like if you go to Napoli, a pizza is like 5 to 8 euros, and it's the best pizza in the world. But you see, I think New York, we are already so spoiled, I think. I
agree.
We're so spoiled, I think.
It's
the food here is
it's part of the reason I'm not gone. The part of the reason I haven't moved to another city or have gone upstate or done something else is just I've been so spoiled by eating around the globe here. It's like, and you can just, it's so convenient. Like I've lived in Brooklyn for over 20 years, and I've always been within like a 4-block radius of like international, like foods from all over. So when you have that and you think about getting away from that and going somewhere where like a Whole Foods is your only exotic way of getting food, I mean that's like a tough call.
Yeah, I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. I mean, upstate is nice, but I can only be there, like... But my dad is a great chef. That's another thing. So if I'm with my family, I'm kind of even more spoiled. Like, they can cook really well.
That's an advantage. But groceries, you got to find the good stuff,
Yeah, that's true. That's why I decided to live in Chinatown. It's much easier for my dad to get groceries, and because he didn't speak the language. But I mean, Chinatown, the ingredients, the price is great and it's fresh because there are a lot of people coming every day to get groceries. I love food. I mean, my family is totally like super on food, so I don't think I can live in a place that without this global, international food culture.
It's stimulating for being creative too, I think, to be around that energy.
Totally like, I think food is the essence of the energy, and we definitely need it. And I don't think I can leave New York. You
can't eat paint. You gotta eat some good food. It's gotta fuel you. So
yeah, but I'm trying to get more healthy. If I'm on the loom like 6 hours or 8 hours a day, I literally just don't move, and I need to do some more like workout stuff. And it's very tiring because my back is already having a problem, because you're holding this gesture for more than a couple hours, then your muscles start to like freeze, and my spine start to like twist, and that's something I need to be really careful about.
I have an idea for us. We can patent this. It's a standing upright loom with elliptical built into it.
Right? But how you step?
I have no idea, but they'll sell like hotcakes. It'll be a huge sensation. It would be amazing though too. I mean, how you've seen people during the pandemic at work, like with the stand-up desks, or like putting the little mini elliptical under the desk, so at least you're moving your feet all day, because we're just hunched over the computer for like hours and hours and hours. You know.
Yeah.
Kids are homeschooling and just like picking up weight and like, you know, getting pale and peaked. It's so nice now that they can go out again, and like, you know, it was tough.
It is tough. I mean, I mean, kids in the house 24/7. Well, I
lived it for a year. It was brutal.
I know. I can't imagine how you do it.
Constant nagging to like go do the treadmill or something. You know, it's just like, you know, it's not a good. I mean, knock on wood. Hopefully, we're, you know, in a much better place here moving forward. So.
Hopefully, I hope like we can travel soon, and you know, we can just meet in person.
Yep.
Like be outside, and you know, and I think like a lot of people think like we can live on a computer now. I was like, no. I definitely need physical interaction with people.
Yeah.
It just helps. It's just like spiritually, you need that, and that's part of human nature.
We're
that's
social
part of
creatures.
Nature.
Yeah. We need it.
Exactly.
It feeds the soul.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, your soul needs it so much, and hopefully. I mean, I already see it. I already see New York coming back. The moment I came back, it's like when everything started to open.
Oh, it's coming back. New York is. Hey, we did. Yeah. First time in like over a year, we did Korean barbecue this weekend, and it was just like, it felt like.
Nice.
You don't appreciate that stuff until you can't do it for a year. You know.
Right.
Like, oh my God, we're sitting here like in a place, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, you definitely need it. I mean, like, I had a luxury in China that, you know, had at least the 6 month of winter in Shanghai was completely normal in a way in Shanghai.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I still went to parties in Shanghai. It was crazy when I said I went to parties, and everybody here was like, whoa, like we haven't partied for like 1 year and a half. And I was like, yep. I mean, Shanghai's pretty great on that side.
Definitely. So what are you working on now? Do you have anything coming up that?
Yes. Actually, I'm on deadline again. I will have I will have a couple group shows over the summer. One in upstate, one with Halsey McKay in East Hampton, and I will have. I'm working on this little project, also in East Hampton with Amanda's Wood. It will be like a very small space, but having some Brazilian furnitures from mid-centuries, and then have it's like a show, but with, you know, like furniture, Brazilian furnitures, and my works on the wall. Nice. So I'm working on that show, and then I mean, this year is pretty good. I had 2 shows, and so Candice Madey and Chambers, this show is gonna be on until July 3rd, and then I will prepare the works for, you know, the fairs like Armory with Halsey McKay and Westbound with Capsule in Shanghai. Mm-hmm. So pretty good. Yeah. I'm really working. Yeah, really trying to you know, finish before the deadline. So mostly will be the woven work on the loom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I will still make some knitted works, but it's gonna be, you know, just in between. But I plan to make a big piece for the fair. So
3D or to like on the wall?
Still on the wall. I was thinking about making like, sculptures. But I think that's on the way. I really need to figure out how I'm gonna make. Because I always wanted to be a sculptor, making 3D stuff.
Yeah.
But I think get used to the 2D and gradually move to 3D is the way for me to do it.
Yeah.
So it's still gonna be this year. It's still gonna be 2D, and let's see if when I have the opportunity to make 3D stuff. And I already have some ideas, but it's still like at the very early stage. But it's definitely gonna be also with textile and and I hope I can go back to ceramics, to clay in the future.
Yeah.
But that's gonna take. I need to figure out like I might have access to the clay stuff in China, but I definitely want a space with ceramics in the here too, so I can work on both materials. So it's pretty good this year, and next year will be good year hopefully when everything open up.
Yeah, it's gonna feel like. And people, I don't know if you agree. I mean, it sounds like you were doing it too, but like, I've been really productive being shut in. So I think there's going to be a lot of great work that kind of comes out of this time period of just, just people like huddled in and working and in extreme situations. Sometimes it brings, interesting creative output.
Yeah. I do think, I mean, you have two kind, like one is like really devoted, like very focused. You have another group which is like super depressed and not be able to make any
That's
work.
true.
So I think I'm definitely the on your side, like getting very productive and really like focus on yourself. I like when there's not too many obligation. When I was in China, my mom was quite demanding. I had to do a lot of family stuff and a lot of obligations, and that really tires me. And for me, I can do that a little bit, but I don't appreciate for like too many things.
Right.
It's gonna really drain me, and I couldn't like what and then working on the loom, you need a certain rhythm. Like once you build this rhythm, like how many hours you weave a day, and you kind of just every day it has to be like the same. Otherwise, if you stop, then your rhythm stop, and then when you go back to it, you have to start a new rhythm.
Yeah.
So there's always this rhythm throughout the process of making anything. Then for me, it's like, okay, if I because usually I would make. Like I would kind of make like 10, 12 yards of warp. So the whole 10, like 12 yards of warp kind of it's like an ongoing process. There's no stop. I don't cut it. I don't really cut it once I finish one piece. I usually cut the final ends when I have like 10 pieces on the loom. So I definitely need this rhythm just to keep going. And so for the last 3 months I was on the loom, I spent like 3 months just like going back to it and go out, go back and go out, and I don't enjoy that process. If I'm in the process, I like finish it in one time and just be very, very focused.
Yeah.
So
well, I look forward to seeing the work that's coming out. And then everyone, the gallery's open, right? So people can go. Is it normal hours with your show now?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. Like every gallery is kind of different nowadays.
Yeah.
Like Candice is opening. I don't know. She just hired somebody new, so maybe the hours will be different. It's from Wednesday to Saturday. From I think 11 to 6. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think they're opening from Sunday to Tuesday, But I need to figure out because the hours are still kind of weird. But now you don't have to make an appointment. Like you can just go straight in.
Perfect. So people in New York should check out that show for sure. And then you're on Instagram, but I don't even know how to describe your handle.
Oh. Da.
Is there, yeah, I was thinking when I was looking at it, I was like, is this like a musical, like is there like a, da 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 da? I didn't know if it was like rhythm or if it was just...
Yeah, like I don't know, randomly I had this for years, so I just don't want to change it. Like, and then it's like, when I put it, I was like, what is it? And then my friend was like, it sounds like da 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 da, like that kind of...
Yeah.
You see, it is like a music kind of.
But it also has a little Dada surrealist, play too.
Yeah, and also I remember. Now I remember because one of my high school friends' parents, they couldn't they couldn't say the English word of my name Miranda.
Oh, yeah.
So my friend was like, just call her Dada, because like Miranda, like the D-A at the end. So that's how my high school's parents,
got it.
how they call me. So I was like, okay, fine. But that's not even my legal name.
That's just a nickname.
That's my English.
Like
everybody
English.
In China.
Right. I never understand why L's and R's get thrown into those English names. Like my son he's half Japanese, so he has a Japanese name, so we deliberately picked a name that doesn't have an R in it because in English, Japanese names are butchered because they say the R like an R when it's not an R. So you know what I mean? It's a tough It's a tough switch. Yeah. Although, did you grow up? Did you speak Shanghainese, like that dialect of Mandarin?
Yes, I do.
Is it like really different, or is it just slightly different?
It's depends because we have so many dialects in China. But Shanghainese is, if you're from the southern part of China, which is like more close to Shanghai, so that region kind of can understand each other, but their the tone, the accent will be a little bit different. The dialect. Yeah. But if you're going, like, let's say like people from Beijing, they probably don't understand a word of Shanghainese.
Right.
Or people from Hong Kong, they don't understand like a word of Shanghainese. But people from like each dialect like kind of it's like Italy. Like every region has their own dialect, but they don't really understand each other.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I love language. It's so fascinating to me.
Do you speak Japanese?
A conversation, like limited. I can get by. Yes.
I
taught myself
yes.
2 of the 3 alphabets, but the Chinese characters, I only know a few. There's so many. It's so hard.
Yeah, but there is a rule, but it is hard, right? Imagine, I don't even know how I learned it. Maybe like when you were young, you just...
Yeah, you just take it in, right?
You just take it in.
How many
when
are
I
there?
started
There's
learning...
like 3,600 or 3,900 of them, aren't there?
5,000 something.
Jeez. Like that. Yeah, there's no chance. I don't even try. And then the hard thing about Japanese is you combine it. So you have to learn the Chinese character and then you have to learn how it's different when you add hiragana to it. So it's like impossible for me.
But in Chinese, like the characters, it's like the one that you usually use are not that many. Like the conversational, like it's not that many. But there are like a lot. It's crazy. Yeah, but I also love language. I try to study French, but it seems like very difficult. When I start learning English, it was very difficult already because the whole structure, like we don't have in Chinese we don't really have grammar, we don't really have conjugation, we don't really have tenses. So all these are new for me.
Yeah, but you have tones, which makes it difficult.
Oh yeah. Oh, we have like this, but only four tones.
Yeah, but it's still hard. It's hard when you move those tones over all sorts of different words and stuff. That's why Japanese to me was much like it can be monotone pretty much. You know what I mean? It makes it a little easier.
Yeah, true. Because like in Chinese, if you say words in different tones, it means totally different things.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah. it's a lot about memorizing those. Oh my god, I don't even know how can people even memorize all these?
I don't know, but I'll tell you this: I'm in the stage of my life where I'm losing memory, not gaining. So.
Oh no, you look very young.
Oh, it's just the. Well, thank you. I'm not yet, but I feel like part of it too is just there's so much data that we have to remember these days that you just let your phone do it, and then you just can't keep it all. You know what I mean? It's like I just have a hard time just memorizing all the stuff that's going on. And I've kind of succumbed to it. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to depend on that phone. It's going to tell me when to do what I need to do, or I'm just not going to remember.
Yeah, but do you think it's going to be even more difficult if you rely on, the phones, the tools too much? Then you don't even practice your brain. Like, you don't let your brain to practice, memorizing things. I don't know. This whole technology thing kind of, I don't know what's gonna be.
Yeah,
the
no,
future.
I know what you're saying. You become dependent upon the technology, but the thing is like, I mean, I'm old enough to have known life before smartphones and the internet, and there were only a certain amount of things during the day that you could know or remember. Like, you would call someone from a phone when you were somewhere, and then you wouldn't talk to people all day until you got home from work or home from school. Now it's like there's data coming at you all the time. You're just constantly being bombarded by text messages and calendars and all that stuff. So I think it's partially the technology flooding you that makes you unable to remember all of it. And we're constantly multitasking and getting distracted, where we used to not do that. So our brain isn't wired to handle this kind of like change in direction all the time from like different sort of information threads being thrown at us. It's weird.
True. The mass information. Like we in the old time, we didn't have that much information to remember.
No.
Now it's like so many.
There was a comedian talking about how like back in the day you would wake up and go to work. I forget who was talking about this, but basically like your kid could have gotten lost and like, your wife was in a fender bender or whatever, and you wouldn't know until you just got home. like there was you didn't have a phone, you didn't have a car phone, like there was just no way to know until you just get back there. That was life for a long time. But it's not like that
must
anymore.
I feel like that people must feel very secure in a way, or I don't know, I don't think I can live in that anymore. I will feel like super insecure all the time.
Yeah, you can't anymore. Like, I've acclimated to being a total phone person, but back then I didn't think about it. I was fine with it. And it was much more relaxing.
True.
Because when I was in college, there were no smartphones, there was no internet. So it was, and now I teach college students and I see how they're so different. It's such a different experience, Like, they're posting pictures of their painting class like in real time to the world. You know what I mean? Which is much different than, I got to keep trying at this so I can one day move to New York and try to show this stuff. That's like a much different time frame. So it's the whole thing is like is pretty amazing and ridiculous and fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I had a little memory when, the time that we didn't have the computer and the internet. But I don't know, like, I don't know, maybe it's just, my fantasy, like, imagine the past. Like, I feel like the time feels longer and people were more patient.
Definitely.
Like, nowadays, everything has to be within speed. Like, you're having this show in 3 months. And for me, it's like, I don't know, I feel like I kind of hope things can slow down a bit more so you have more time to look at things and to feel about things instead of, because things are moving so fast, you don't even have any time to do reflection and to enjoy even.
Nope,
so,
it's gone.
I don't know, but that's I know. And then people are super impatient too. Like, if you don't reply
a text message or you don't reply an email,
Right.
then people will chase after you. And I'm like, I kind of hope people can be a little bit more patient. But it's also, we're living this like extreme capitalism time that time is money, money is time, and kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing it's hard to go back from. I mean, I used to take photos on my camera, and then I'd have to go drop it off somewhere and get it developed in like a week. Then I'd get the photos back, open it up, and see them for the first time. Then I'd have to take them to school and show my friends. Now I get annoyed if they don't get the text within 5 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a big difference there. I don't know what it means or what it is, but it does something to you. You know what I mean? To the brain.
Right.
And the interesting thing is all visual. You know what I mean? Like we're all experiencing this stuff visually. So our relationship to visual images, of course, is going to have, a different sensibility.
And even, I feel like the funny thing is like the world we're living is so fast. Like our expectation from others are like, the speed, efficiency, speed. But our lives, like, the physical living, like the physical lives are like longer. Like used to be like the average age was like maybe 60s and 70. Now like people easily go over 100 years old.
Yeah.
But you have so many things, but you still are moving so fast. And I was like, when you're 80, your energy level will be low. You just like can't.
It's true.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I think too much.
No, I'm right there with you. It's interesting, the pace. And then it's cool because you're doing something like in your work that has such a specific pace to it that forces you to slow down. And I love that about painting too. It's kind of forces this change of pace, and it's almost like, a lucky thing to have. That you can spend time in a room slowly building something up. And maybe that's partially why people still love to look at analog work, is because someone took the time to do it.
Right. I really learned to be patient with my work. You can never hurry it. With painting, oil painting, you have to wait it to be dried. Yeah. With clay, even more, you have to be really careful about the consistency of the clay. Is it too wet? Is it too dry? It's all about timing. Maybe that's why I enjoy that process, even though it's really repetitive. But at the same time, it's like, if you don't spend that much time, it's never going to be finished. You can't rush it. You have to be very patient. This whole process, it kind of forces you to have this slow down your pace.
Yeah, I think it's for a certain person though, because I've noticed our new media department at our university is definitely growing. You know what I mean? I think more people are just naturally comfortable working on the computer to do things, to express themselves, to make, quote unquote, make things. So, there's always going to be the people who just love to do a screen print or to make a painting, but I think more and more people are feeling a little more comfortable with technology and creativity, which is cool. Tools change over time, I guess.
Yeah. I wonder, like, with this whole NFT thing.
Oh, boy. Now you just opened up a can of worms.
I know, right? It's let's not go on to that. It's gonna be it's gonna be a big topic. But I do think every tool you can, for the digital tool, I think every tool has its own language.
Definitely.
And in our age, the technology and digital tools become an enormous, parts in our life. And yeah. I definitely hope if there's somebody can use this tool well and make something, beautiful, beautiful in a way that's, inspiring, something that's, like how we make painting, that's how we make sculpture. And
yeah, I really hope the digital tool, somebody can use digital tool well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, so you have your show up now up until the beginning of July, and
yes.
Instagram is probably the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing, I imagine.
Yes.
And if they type in your name, they'll find your...
Yeah, if they type my full name. Yeah, or they can even like type my full name. I mean, my Chinese name is kind of complicated, but they'll also find me too.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for spending the time, and it was nice to sort of meet you over here. Hopefully we could do this in person at some point.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank
you so much.
Sound and Vision is recorded, edited, and produced by myself, Brian Alfred. Many thanks to Miranda for the talk. Make sure to check out her shows at Candice Madey and Chambers Fine Art. They're up through July 3rd. If you have a chance, please go to iTunes, leave a rating and review, and spread the word and tell a friend about the podcast who might be into art or music. Also, please check out the website, soundandvisionpodcast.com. For additional images, you can go to Instagram and follow at Sound and Vision Podcast. You can find out more about my work at brianalfred.net. Many thanks to Lullatone for the intro-outro music, Michael Lovett for the introduction, and most of all, thanks to you for listening. More good episodes coming up. Make sure you stay tuned.